Welcome back, guys, and it's time to start the next chapter. As you can see here, the name of this chapter is Configure and Manage vSAN Direct for Cloud Native Applications. In this chapter, you're going to see a brand new feature that was introduced in 7.0 Update 1. And although you don't have a lab for this, I want to do a quick demo. If you want, you can always do the same thing that I'm doing, and in a nutshell, you can make your own lab. So let's take a look at what this is. Let's talk about why this could be something very important for some of you guys. Let's read what it says in this page. Notice it says employing vSAN Direct to manage local disks that use vSAN management capabilities is beneficial when working with cloud native storage, such as persistent volumes. So the first thing to understand is that this feature was created with Kubernetes in mind. So what we're talking about here in a nutshell is taking internal drives, which are not part of your vSAN data store, and with the vSphere client, turning them into vSAN Direct data stores. So we're talking about creating file systems, data stores that use VMFS, to be more precise or to be more specific, VMFS-L, and somehow managing those data stores as if they were vSAN data stores. Now let's take a look at the goals. Here, you can see that first and foremost, I want to explain what vSAN Direct is. And once again, although you don't have a lab, I want to do a demo. In order to do a demo, I am going to have to delete a disk group because we don't have additional disks to play with. So I am going to be doing this demo on my second cluster. Notice, bullet number 2 says, we will explain the use cases of vSAN Direct. And once again, the idea here is you can create these data stores and give them to your DevOps people, to your Kubernetes people. That way they can use them, perhaps as persistent volumes. And when you take a look, notice the third bullet mentions, once again, that this was pretty much created with one thing in mind. And then lastly, we're going to see not only how to create those data stores, but then what you would actually expect to see when you go to different places in both the vSphere client and also the CLI. I'm talking about the command line. So let's talk about this feature. If you take a look here at the very top, they mention once again that this feature enables users to create a vSAN Direct data store on a single disk. So we're talking about taking a disk that does not have a file system and using the vSphere client, telling your cluster that those individual disks are going to be vSAN Direct data stores. Now, when I do my demo, I want to show you the partitioning scheme of that drive before we actually create a vSAN Direct data store. And then, of course, I'm going to show you the same partition scheme afterwards. When you take a look, as mentioned, if you have, for example, 2 different disks, you get to create, if you want, 2 vSAN Direct data stores. So it's 1 per disk. And if you look at the rest of the page, here they mention features. And notice the idea is simple. As you create these vSAN Direct data stores, we get to manage them with the same utilities that we use to manage our regular vSAN data store. So notice bullet number 1. It says vSAN Direct extends the HCI management features of vSAN to the local disks, which are formatted with VMFS. Remember, when you create a vSAN Direct data store, that disk will be repartitioned, and the system will create not a regular VMFS file system. It's going to be a stripped down version of VMFS called VMFS-L. Some of you guys may remember that name from back in vSAN 5.5. This is before we start to use vSAN-FS. Back in 5.5, we used to use VMFS-L for the file system for your vSAN data store. Bullet number 2, vSAN Direct manages and monitors disks formatted with VMFS and provides insights into the health, performance, and capacity of these disks. So again, you get to monitor those vSAN Direct data stores with the same tools that we'd use for a regular vSAN cluster. And if you take a look, bullet number 3 says vSAN Direct enables users to host persistent services on a VMFS data store that is again managed as if it was your regular vSAN data store. Notice lastly, it says it enables users to define placement policies and quotas for those particular local disks. So if you look at this page, here again, this page starts by saying vSAN Direct use cases. And once again, let's keep it simple. You have the ability to create different types of vSAN Direct data stores. And again, depending on the type of disk that you use, you could use some for your critical applications and others maybe with lesser drives for your secondary type of VMs. Notice, for example, here they mention use cases. Bullet number 1, it mentions application with high-end storage requirements. Notice again, they mention, for example, a MongoDB database type of workload. Then they mention applications with mid-range storage requirements. Once again, they have a couple of examples here. And then again, potentially also using some of these vSAN Direct data stores for your, let's say, low-end type of workloads. So when we look at this drawing, all I want you to notice in this drawing is the reference to DevOps and also Kubernetes. So once again, I'm going to show you exactly what the vSAN administrator would do. The rest would be done not by you necessarily, but instead it would be done by the Kubernetes person. So at the very top of this page, notice it says vSAN Direct supports cloud-native applications running in a vSphere 7X supervisor Kubernetes cluster. Other Kubernetes clusters are not currently supported. And again, the idea is if you have, for example, 5 disks, you get to create 5 of this vSAN Direct data stores. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's a 1-to-1 mapping. Notice these different data stores create what we call a storage pool. Now, when you look at this particular page, here, as we continue talking about the key concepts of vSAN Direct, notice you always see the reference to Kubernetes. So when you look at the acronyms PV, remember they're talking about persistent volumes. So you can see references to Cloud Native Storage Control Plane, first-class disks, and besides that, storage policy-based management and vSAN management services. So let's have some fun. This time, I have decided to mix the lecture with a demo. So in a second, I want to do a demo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by deleting a disk group. As I delete the disk group, that will free up 2 drives. And then we're going to take a look at the command line. We're going to have a 5 gig and a 50 gig drive. These drives are going to be the ones that at one time were in a disk group. Let's take a look. The idea here is quite simple. If you want to play with this particular feature, you will quickly realize that you don't have any disks that you could use for this demo. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take apart one of your existing disk groups. So let's take a look at what I have. For this demo, I will be using my second cluster. And if you take a look, I am going to select SB vSAN 01. I am going to choose the option configure. And I am going to go to disk management. Now you typically create the vSAN Direct file systems from here. But like I said, we don't have any disks available. Now typically what you would do is you would click on claim and use disks. But you can see again, I don't have any disks that I could use. So what do? In this case, I am going to delete the disk group for one of my hosts. I'm going to delete this disk group. As you can see here, this disk group has a 5 gig cache device and a 50 gig capacity device. Once I delete the disk group, then I have the choice to play with these 2 disks. So remember, you can create 1 vSAN Direct file system per disk. So let's start by removing the disk group. In 7.0 Update 1, if you want to remove a disk group, you simply click on these three dots. Notice I will choose the option remove. Now I have the choice to move data around. Notice I have one virtual machine. That virtual machine is called Javier01. You have three different options. I'm going to go with full data migration. I don't have an operating system in that VM, so it's not like I have to move a lot of data. So once again, the first thing I'm doing here is I'm deleting an existing disk group simply because I don't have any disks to play with. Now this should take a few seconds. Let's take a look. Notice I can select recent tasks. I can wait a few seconds. And as soon as the disk group is deleted, then I can play with the 5 gig drive and the 50 gig drive. Now in the meantime, one of the things that I can show you is that if I go to that host, remember that host is SB04, my vSAN data store here will shrink. It's going to go from 200 gigs to 150 gigs. Now, as we can see here, the data store still shows 200 gigs. So once again, while I wait, I'm going to go to VMFS devices disks. And remember, this is the link to dev disks. With vSAN, all the disks that I use in vSAN typically have two partitions. So they typically have a very small partition, which is partition 1. That's for metadata. And then you have this partition, which is about 99% of the disk. Now you can see the disk group has been deleted. So when we take a look, first I'm going to type df-h. My vSAN data store has shrunk from 200 gigs to 150. And if you take a look, notice the partitions are gone on both target 1 and target 2. Remember, these were the cache and capacity devices. Remember, a second ago, both of them had two partitions. You can see them right here, :1 and :2. Oops, :2. That's more like it. So, what I want to do now is I want to show you how to create a vSAN direct file system. And as we were saying, you create those vSAN direct file systems from here. Now, I'm going to click on claim unused disks. And when I do that, you can see the two drives available. So I'm going to start with one of them. Doesn't really matter which one. Now, if you take a look, the first one is 50 gigs. The second one is 5 gigs. So what I want to do here is I want to choose do not claim for the small drive. Ignore this warning for now. Now notice right now I'm getting this error because again, the system thinks I'm trying to create a disk group with only a capacity device. That's not the case. So what I want to show you here is that I choose not to use one drive. And when it comes to the 50 gig device, you can see different choices. I could choose cache tier, capacity tier. In 7.0 Update 1, we have a brand new choice, vSAN Direct. So that's what you want to do. Now, as soon as you choose one drive to be a vSAN Direct option, and the other one, again, do not claim, notice the error disappears. So what's going to happen is the system, the software, will take the 50 gig drive. It's going to partition the drive. But this time around, it's not going to create a vSAN FS file system. It's going to create a file system, which in the GUI you will see vSAN Direct. But we've mentioned it's VMFS-L underneath. And that drive will only have one partition. Let's take a look. I'm going to choose create. Notice it says done, completed. Now what I'm going to do here is I am going to expand this. And as you can see here, when it comes to SB-ES604, notice again, I don't have a disk group, but I have that new entry called vSAN Direct Disks. It says 1. And if I select that, you can see which one that is. You can see that is my 50 gig flash device. Now, let's go to the command line for a second. If you take a look, first, I want to type ls. Notice I use target 2. And notice when it comes to target 2, I only have one partition. I no longer have 2. Now that's because, again, this is not a typical vSAN disk. Again, this drive was formatted differently. Now, the next thing I want to do, I want to type df-h. And notice that here, you will see the new entry. Notice in the command line it says vSAN uppercase D. You can see the drive is 50 gigs, roughly speaking. You can see how much space I have already used. That's for metadata. And you can see the mount point. Once again, all the mount points in vSphere start with VMFS volumes. Notice you have this whole entry. So notice it says VMFS volumes. Then it says vSAN direct. Then you see the name of the host. And then you see the name of the disks, which again is controller 0, target 2 LON 0. Now, if you take a look, I'm going to go to the storage view. And when I go to the storage view, you can see the same thing here. Once again, when you go to the storage view, you can see the presence of your typical file systems, both VMFS, potentially NFS, potentially vSANFS, and also data source for vVols. Here you see now there's a new entry, and this one is vSAN direct. When I select this one, here notice you will not see VMFS-L. So on the upper left, you see vSAN direct. On the upper right, you see the capacity, and you see the reference to this tag. Remember, I didn't create the tag. I didn't assign the tag. This happens automatically. So again, that's all it takes to create a vSAN direct file system. The rest, once again, will be pretty much up to the Kubernetes person. So one more time, if you want to create another one, what did I do? Number one, I freed up some disks. Number two, I went to my cluster. I selected configure. I went to disk management. And once again, I scrolled down. I found my host. Remember again, this host is SV04. I still have another drive available. And if you take a look, what I'm going to do is I am going to do it one more time, this time using the 5 gig drive. I'm going to claim unused disks. I should see only one drive. That's my 5 gig drive. I am going to choose once again vSAN direct. And again, that's all it takes to create a vSAN direct file system. So this way you can monitor these vSAN direct file systems using the typical vSAN tools. Hopefully again that demo helped. I'll see you back when we go back to the book. Let's create the file system. Let's verify that everything is fine. And let's proceed. Let's take a look. Once again, I'm going to scroll down. I click on vSAN direct disks and I see 2. If I go back to the command line, I should see, once again, 2. One is 5 gigs, one is 50 gigs. Notice, there they are. Thank you. And let's go back and finish the chapter. Thanks. Now, when you look at this page, here they're showing you the responsibilities of each person. I'm talking about my responsibilities as the vSAN administrator and potentially the responsibilities of the Kubernetes person. Now, if you look at the very top of the illustration, once again, all I have to do is provision a vSAN direct data store. Obviously, I need to have disks available for this. And then I need to, again, create namespace and assign vSAN direct storage policies. The rest, once again, wouldn't be up to me. You can see that the other person would be in charge of claiming persistent volumes with vSAN direct storage pools. And again, he would be the one consuming the actual space and persistent service. Now, when you take a look, what they show you here is exactly what I just did. So once again, I showed you how to create the vSAN data store. I'm talking about the vSAN direct data store. And again, you get to see it alongside your distros and your cache and capacity disks. Once you actually take a look at the very bottom, you can select the reference to that vSAN direct data store. And then again, at the point, you can see which drive was used for that vSAN direct data store. Now here, you have a better picture compared to what you saw before. So once again, when you look at the very bottom, you can see in this case that we have one and only one vSAN direct disk being used. Once again, you saw in my demo that if you select that, you can tell exactly which drive we're talking about. I showed you this as well. So again, I didn't create that tag. I didn't associate it to the vSAN direct data store. This happens automatically. So every single one of your vSAN direct data stores will be assigned that tag that you see there. Once again, the tag is called vSAN direct. And if you take a look, one of the things that you could do is go to the homepage of the vSphere client. And then at that point, you could take a look at your existing virtual machine storage policies. Once again, here we're talking about tag-based placement rules. On that note, here you have another screenshot where you get to see which drives you could potentially use for a vSAN direct data store. And again, if I choose a particular policy for this, then again, if I click on storage compatibility, I would be able to see all of the drives that were configured for vSAN direct. When it comes to capacity reporting, just like you can actually select your cluster and go to monitor and click on capacity and look at how your vSAN data store is being used, same thing applies to your vSAN direct data store. So when you take a look, notice, I'm going to see if I can highlight this. No, you can't do that easily. The idea here, if you notice where the mouse is, you can click on vSAN direct. Once again, you can see attributes about that particular data store and how it happens to be used. On that note, that concludes this particular module. Thank you and enjoy the break. We have one more lesson to go. And again, that one is about file services. Enjoy the break. Thank you.